From the art house to the multiplex, physical media, and streaming. Welcome to the Cinema Recall Podcast. Here are your hosts, the Vern and Ashley.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Cinema Recall Podcast. I am the Vern. I promise Ashley will be returning to the show, but we are here. We're here for a brand new season. Not only that, folks, but we have a whole brand new hosting site, brand new things. This is basically a reboot of Cinema Recall, and I'll explain later in future episodes what's going to be happening with our past episodes, but this is going to be a whole new season of Cinema Recall, and I'm very happy that you can be here to watch and to listen. And our first special guest is an author, a famous author right now. We have Mr. Christian Hurst, who has written the book Lily Starling and the Voyage of the Salamander, as I'm holding here right now in my hand. Welcome, Christian, to the show.
Happy to be here. Hi.
It's very happy to be here. Now, I've only read 34 pages of this book so far, all right? And I'm really enjoying it. As you can see, it's a long book, and
It is long.
I'm terrible at reading long books here, all right? But
I'll tell you right now, the only negative feedback that I've really gotten from the book is that it's long. So
well, when I'm reading it, and I'm reading all the different adventures that Lily is going through, it reminds me very much of like old 30s serials. And those
that's
tapes
good.
those tapes of stories you see in pulp paperbacks from like the 30s and 40s. It has that sort of like style, but mixed in with like newer elements. And I'm kind of
Exactly.
curious, Christian, why not make it into a serial, like a series of books?
That's a good question. You know, I was thinking about actually, I'm glad you brought that up because as I was writing it, I did have a very episodic structure in my head. And it kind of goes back to, I mean, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I grew up on Star Trek, and when I was a kid, I liked the old serialized shows where every episode was a different adventure. And so that's kind of the way I looked at it when I wrote the book. It's almost like the book is a season of television, but like an old season of television where you would have these longer, adventures, and some of them are kind of two-parters, and some of the threads go through. But if you look at each chapter, and I also tend to write in very long chapters, which bugs some people too. But get a bookmark, you'll be fine. Just,
Yeah.
but when you read a chapter, it has its own arc. So the entire book has an arc. Each character has an arc, but each chapter also has a beginning, a middle, and an end that has some fulfillment in it. So some of the chapters are quite short, especially at the beginning of the book. But then as you get in the middle, some of the chapters are very long.
So, just for our watchers and listeners out there that are not too familiar with this book and the contents of it, though, can you tell them just real briefly what is Lily Starling and the Voyage of the Salamander? I'm going to ask you more about the ship's name later on, but can you just give us a basic rundown of the book?
Absolutely, yeah. So the book, I love to write in science fiction. I love science fiction, but this is the subgenre of space opera. So essentially what that means for anyone who's not familiar. And, Star Wars falls into that category, Dune, Star Trek. So it's more popular. It used to be called pulp sci-fi because of the old pulp paperbacks before the term space opera was applied to it. But essentially, these are fantastical stories that don't have to be set in space. They could be set in, Candyland, or they could be set in whatever setting. But putting them in space takes it, it's enough adjacent to the human adventure that it's relatable, but it's far enough away that it helps people lower their guard. So, so what the book is really about is the human experience. It's about um, feelings of loneliness and self-discovery and really finding yourself. And so, I focus on um, I'm not going to give spoilers, but the protagonist is a young girl, a 17-year-old, 18-year-old girl who is on a journey of self-discovery. She's not quite sure where she fits in the world, and she goes on this fantastic journey and ends up, on all these adventures in outer space and with aliens and all the stuff that goes along with sci-fi. But along the way, the themes are really about identity and discovering yourself and finding your way in the galaxy, which I think is something people have asked me a lot why I chose to write in the YA young adult category. And that's why I think that's a message that especially young people right now really need to hear is like, if you feel lonely, um, that the loneliness doesn't last forever, that I believe in the beginning of the book, you'll see this phrase, but you'll start to see the edges of the cage, and the loneliness won't trap you forever. So that's really the through line of the book.
Sure. Was this like book kind of written to be sort of like your inner child in a way when you started writing this
Yeah,
chapter?
in a way, the protagonist, even though she's a 18-year-old girl, she in a way it has a lot of me in her, and a lot of other people that I've known throughout my life. But I really wrote it through a personal lens. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, sure, because I mentioned that because I was listening to interviews with Nicholas Winding Refn when he was making the Neon Demon, and he wrote that movie because he just had daughters, and he just was concerned about like the level of like beauty and the way that stuff is influencing his kids, and so
Hmm.
he wanted to write a story about the 16-year-old girl in him that he could tell us the story that his girls and daughters would be proud of. And that's how he came up with the Neon Demon, which is really kind of twisted and bizarre in some ways there too, but it is so sweet. And so I was kind of like curious to make that connection.
That's really cool. And yes, you're absolutely right. And like, um, one of the reasons why I chose a female protagonist is because um, I think that a lot of times uh, you like female protagonist has become a whole subgenre
Sure.
and of fiction, and strong female lead is the kind of the trope now that is thrown around, and people are like, I can't stand the strong female lead trope, and things like that. I wanted to write her as I would see a hero. Like when I was a kid and I watched Captain Kirk or James Bond, or like somebody who they lead with their passions. And I
Mhm.
think especially I'm writing the second book now, you're going to see it even more. But like Lily, in the character is somebody who is just like any other protagonist or someone on the hero's journey, um, where she's driven by her passions and um, the need to discover herself and find her place in the galaxy. It doesn't really matter if she's a girl or a boy or a man or a woman or neither. She is a character that I'm hoping that everyone can find some connection to.
Yeah, and from what I've read so far in there, she's a very intriguing character, and the way that she starts off, I believe, like just kind of like lost, not really sure of where she is, and almost is like having to. She has like struggle to find food and everything like that. I like the way that you build the world in the very beginning, the very like desolate kind of like grimy environments and whatnot. Was that inspired by anything at all, or?
Yes, a lot of things, and I grew up in the city, and I also spent time. I've spent a lot of time in different cities, and it's been kind of a um, something that I have always, it's been important to me, I guess, through my whole life to point out the people that are kind of people and things that are overlooked in cities. I love cities. I love the fabric of the city, and I love it with all its flaws. I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and most people hear Baltimore and they think Fox News Baltimore on fire
Oh,
constantly, and
I think about John Waters. I think about John
oh,
Waters.
good. I love
Yeah,
John Waters,
I
but
automatically
a
think
lot
of
of people have a negative perception, and so, but I really wanted to put in some of what's important to me is seeing everything, seeing all of it, even with its flaws, and still loving
sure.
it.
Yeah.
And because that's when we start to really have compassion for other people, is when you can see exactly what's going on and still feel love for that person. And so that's why I put a lot of that in there. That bit at the beginning where she passes the projects, the housing projects that are run down and they are decorated for Halloween. That was something that really happened to me. I was walking on my way to work in Alexandria, Virginia. This was back in 2013, 2014. And they had up in Old Town North, they call it now, which is just near the Canal Center. And um, they had condemned these housing projects and relocated everybody quite far away from public transit, unfortunately. And these shells of public housing, they thought it would be cute to decorate them like a haunted house. And as I walked by there, I was just like, that is just the tackiest thing. I don't know if I could swear on this podcast,
You can just swear however the fuck you want to swear.
but okay, but that yeah, that is just the tackiest shit I've ever seen, and so I remembered that for a long time, and I knew I was going to put it in the story eventually. But so yes, I think
Yeah.
some of those things are very important to me. Obviously, I've never been a underhomed person, but there before the grace of God, right? I mean, I feel like I've come close in my life to be too close enough to being desperate in a lot of areas of my life that I understand those are humans too, and that and my heart reaches out to the people that have less, you know.
I love that. That is a very sweet message, Christian. Thank you. That was very nice. Now, before we get going even more with your book, now originally I've been messaged from I think it is either your brother or friend Dwight Hurst
Yes, my brother.
of the Broken Brains podcast. He is your brother. Okay. Oh, that's well. Shout out to Dwight for hooking us up about this interview because that was cool. And I gotta say, it was really kind of cool to get your book in the mail, which I'm holding here right now. And I was very thrilled and love it to start reading it. But as I said before, I am a bad reader, and I've been reading parts of this in
That is
sections
okay.
right now. But I am enjoying it. I am curious though. Is this your first book you wrote?
So I've been writing since I was like 11 or
Okay.
even younger. I wrote a comic book when I was like 8.
Oh
And
yeah.
I was just talking about that in another interview, actually. The comic book I wrote when I was 8, just because it's hilarious, and I can go into detail if you want. But I've written a lot of things. This is the first novel I've ever published under my own name. So
Really?
I have a pen name that I will not disclose under penalty of torture, but and I have some professional books, nonfiction books that are under my professional imprint. But this is the first novel that I've ever published under my own name. Yeah.
That is a daunting task to write a book by yourself. All right, especially with a book with this length here, and also it's also kind of a daunting task to like get to be published and everything too. Like this probably took a long time to put together. I imagine. How many years did it take
So
you?
one of the things that's interesting about I have about 20 years of experience in the creative world.
Sure.
I started out as a graphic designer, and I've been a creative director for 15 years or so, and I've done a lot of writing, and I've done commercials, and I've done advertising, all that crap. And so I'm really familiar with the industry overall, and so I went into this with not I'm not saying low expectations, but realistic expectations. This was not a project to become rich and famous. This was not a project to even to make money. I'm very uh, I would be happy if I break even, really. I'm not even trying to make a profit on this book. I am currently writing the second book, and I'm hoping that as I go, maybe this could eventually pay for itself. But either way, what I really want to do is just share, with my art with the world. So what I'm saying is I've been very comfortable for a long time putting my work out there. It's something when you're a young creative, it's very stressful, And so now when I'm putting the book out there, I kind of just did it quietly, and a lot of family and friends are like, "Wait, you published a book? What?" And then they realize that's like the most me thing to do, is to just do it because it was ready, and I was ready for showtime, and so I put it out there. But yeah, a lot of these thoughts have been rolling around my head for years. But the book itself came together pretty quickly because it just kind of poured out of me. The second one is a little bit. I'm kind of like fighting with myself. It's like combat, really, writing the second book because there's a lot of uh, story arcs that I'm not as 100% sure what direction they're going in. I have about 5 books like outlined very loosely in my head for this adventure, for Lily and so I don't want to keep the audience. First of all, I didn't realize that I would have fans this early on. I was surprised anybody even bought the book. But now that I have fans, I don't want to keep them waiting forever for the second book, and so I'm trying to get that out into the world, and then I'll think about where it goes from there. But this first one actually spilled out of me rather easily. So
Well, that's amazing. It seems to me that you've got a good passion about what you write about. And when I've interviewed other authors, they just say, "Hey, I just enjoy writing. I could just keep writing nonstop." And I'm curious.
absolutely.
I mean, I am curious though. When you wrote this particular story, though, did you just have like the storyline in mind? Did you have like the characters first, or how does that work out? I know nothing about book writing. I think I started writing like a fun little fan fiction book I've
Yeah.
done. So yeah, I
So
just
everybody's
curious.
process is different, and it's interesting because you'll have a lot of people, especially in the indie writing community, which I've gotten to know a lot of people now, and people who will really be sure that their way is the right way. But I'll tell you right now, there's no right way to be creative, and um, there, so everybody's different. But for me, I wouldn't write it unless the idea was there. So I had somebody the other day ask me, "How do you get a good idea for a story?" And I'm like, I really have like 100 ideas rolling around in my head at any given time for stories that I want to. I have a comedy novel in mind that I kind of sketched out that I want to write. I have like this other series of kind of like this James Bond in space, and I have like all these ideas that I want to get out there. I just don't have the time, and I have limited energy. You know what I mean? So,
Sure.
so it's not so much a uh, it's more about restraint almost. It's like, how do I focus and pull back and decide what's actually going to go into the first book. So when it came time to sit down and start writing, I started with um, Lily in San Francisco, on the street, and I got that on the page. And then once I got that on the page, and I knew in the first chapter I wanted her to meet the crew of the Salamander. So once I got that arc written out, it just sort of progressed linearly from there for me. And I know a lot of writers can't write that way. They have to be very, I had a loose sketch, like I said, but it was a very big loose sketch. But for me, um, when I was young, I ramble a lot. Sorry. When I was
No.
young, I was a big Shakespeare nerd, and I still love Shakespeare. And um, there's a myth or a rumor that Shakespeare would write a play from beginning to end without going back and changing anything. And a lot of his plays kind of read that way. It's like uh, there are a lot. He has a lot of Shakespeare plays have a lot of plot holes and stuff. And
Sure.
but if he does go back and fix something, he does it by addition and not, actually going back and revising his earlier uh, draft. And so I kind of have always thought of that as I create things because I think it makes it feel more real. We don't have
Yeah.
the opportunity to go back in time and fix things in our lives. So if I write a problem into my story, I write a solution later in the book to that problem rather than going back and making it all clean and nice and fancy. And I think that messiness feels more real to people. It makes the
Mhm.
universe feel more lived in.
And it's a great thing too that you mentioned about writing solutions to your problems that you write is that there's all this talk about AI and
Mm,
AI authors and AI books and everything like that. Like it's so easy to like
right.
write a book, and the fact that you and other authors have talked about have been like writing their own material. I which do you consider AI to be like not saying AI to actually write a book, but
Mm.
would you use AI to help maybe like promote your book or something like that, or would you?
So this is kind of a hot topic, and I
Yes,
I won't go too into the weeds, but I will say in my professional life, I am I'm definitely in the middle when it comes to AI. I wouldn't call myself a cheerleader for it, but I'm also not one of those knee-jerk automatically condemning it either.
yeah,
And so, in my professional life, and I've actually written about this too, I have looked for ways that as creatives we can be a part of this conversation, because if we are so against it that we just say I'm not touching it at all and I'm going to boycott it, then we are out of the conversation, we're not at the table, and so it's just going to go on without us. We're not going to stop it by protesting it.
hmm,
And so my position in my professional life has always been, um, that we should learn as much as we can about it. And when you learn about it, you really learn that it's just another tool, and that if if there's blame to be assigned to people for things like plagiarism, for things like um, bad work, for things like uh, you know um, energy consumption, we need to look at the humans who are behind that and not blame the tool. The tool is not responsible for
yeah,
anything, and we
that
apply an intelligence to it because sometimes it can act eerily human, but it's the humans that are operating the tool that we need to look at as far as the ethics. So when you say the
yep.
ethics of AI, you you're not talking about the machine, you're talking about the humans that use it. So that's the conversation that I usually try to have with people. So I have used it, and you'll see I run ads for my book. Some of the ads use AI. I try to use ethical sources like Adobe or Getty, where they have trained the model on their own products and they have permission from the artists and that kind of thing. I do know that it's incredibly complicated. So some of my people in the author community have actually given me a lot of flack for even touching it in that way. I wrote a
Oh,
book about incorporating AI into your creative department, which is one of my professional works. And because I want creative directors not to lose their minds thinking that they're going to lose their whole staff, right? That they're all going to be
sure.
laid off because they're going to be replaced by AI. So my thought is, let's approach it as creative directors and say, well, how can we integrate this and become experts so that we can talk to our executives and say, this is this is how we should be using it and be part of the conversation. So, but I do
I
get a
love
lot of crap from certain people in the artist community that are like, you shouldn't even be talking about it.
Oh
So,
no, I and what you said is just perfect, Christian. It's not the tool; it should be the person who is using the tool that we should be concerned with more. The
right.
tool is just it's almost like innocent bystander. It has nothing really to do with anything. I say this though because I noticed a lot of my friends were just using the Studio Ghibli
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
AI thing. And I know that Miyazaki was against the whole thing of it. And I know that most of my friends who are using that filter is just for fun, so to
Right.
put on their backgrounds on their Facebook wall. They're not going to be selling this anywhere. And
Right.
as long as the artist admits that it's AI, because I've seen like AI being used in certain movies, and I've seen it uh, be used for like some podcast episodes. I use AI. That intro that you just heard, that was all
Mm-hmm.
done with mostly AI.
Mm-hmm.
There's a program that has an AI voice because hey, I'm a small independent podcast, so
Right.
I will just use what I can to get the show out there as more as I can. Um, but I want to go back real quickly into the book if you don't mind, and
Please,
I
yes.
want to talk a little bit more about the crew of the
Uh-huh.
Salamander. Uh, now, as I was reading this book, I did have some like casting choices, and I apologize if I forget some of their names there.
Oh,
Uh,
that's great.
for Lily Starling, um, I had pictured for her, and I know I'm going to get flack for this because I can't remember Kristen Ritter.
Uh-huh. I
I
don't
I I,
know.
I had her in
I'm
mind.
trying to think who that is.
She was Jessica Jones in that Marvel show.
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
All right, because I did not really understand the age of the character, so
Uh-huh.
I just picked someone that was like kind of close to around that same age right there. Um,
I love
and
it.
and then I think there's a Drat.
Datch,
Datch, yeah, sorry,
the
Datch,
android.
the android right there. I I I also did picture for this one, and I'm just thinking right now off the top of my head because I'm just completely blanking on names right now. And he, no, oh my gosh, this is bad. No, because if you've seen the movie Blade Runner 2049, and he is, you know what, I'm gonna look this up here because, well,
Yeah.
Freedom up, no, freedom. And then there's like one other character in this one too, and she's
I'm trying to find. I did an Instagram poll for celebrity casting for
okay.
this book, and I'm curious because it was just a game. Because again, uh, if this ever got made into a movie, which would be wonderful, I would love to see how an actor would interpret this, but I wouldn't necessarily want it to be a celebrity. I would just want somebody
No,
who
but
would do a good job. But
I just can't
I'm
remember
trying
his
to find
name.
my.
Oh, Dave Bautista as Datch.
Oh, okay, I could see that.
I had him for
Yeah,
that. And then I think it's like Lena. Um,
there's Lena Karis. Yeah.
yes. So for Lena Karis though, I had Tilda Swinton for that one
Oh, interesting.
because the way they described her physical in that one there too, it just reminds
Yeah,
me very much of
the impossibly symmetrical features, and that so
yes.
some of those things are little Easter eggs for the second book because like you won't learn, and I might give away some things here too while we're talking, but um, we'll find that Earth has changed a lot,
Okay.
and so her her the fact that she's like a possibly symmetrical features and just very beautiful actually comes into play in the second book. Um, because Earth has changed somewhat, and there's a faction of Earth that is
But
running part of the government that is all about aesthetic and this sort of obsession of beauty and that kind of thing.
the reason why I said Tilda Swinton because in the book there's almost like somewhat of an androgynous type of style to Instinct, just from what I've read, and that's what made me think about Tilda Swinton. And it was very beautiful, but also
Yeah.
could be
Oh,
seen
so
as
for
androgynous.
Datch I designed as somewhat androgynous, and um, I
Okay.
thought maybe George McKay for Datch,
Oh, sure. Okay.
or even uh, what's his name, Joe Locke from the witch show from the Wanda.
Oh,
Which show?
Wakanda Forever? Or no, not no that which no. About Black
What?
Panther, Wakanda Forever.
Yeah,
No, I know it's from that WandaVision, the witch in that one, Agatha all on.
Agatha all along. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, um, but it's fun to think about that kind of thing, dream casting.
Well, I am also curious too. Why would you name the ship the Salamander? Because when I heard
Okay.
that, it reminded me very much of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy almost, and these type of characters are
Yes.
those.
Okay. So I think there's something very silly about the word, right? It just sounds funny,
Sure.
and so I that was intentional. One, because it kind of grabs you; it's unexpected, right?
Yeah.
Two, because uh, 600 years from now, the idea of what is silly and what is serious might flip. And so that's another thing that we'll see more of in the second book. But you get a hint of it when I don't know if you've gotten to it yet, but there's a part where Captain Callan is making a speech about how uh, glorious and serious and honorable the animal of, like, what a creature the salamander is and how noble
Oh,
they are.
Mobo.
And so you get kind of this like head scratcher, like, are they serious? And Lily experiences that in the book. She's like, is he serious right now? He's like this serious about a salamander, and nobody gets that she thinks it's silly. So it's sort of just part of that fish out of water thing for her, just getting to know that her concept of
Oh,
what is ridiculous, it no longer applies, and in the future. So we're going to see more of that in the second book. And funny, something that kind of goes along with that, there's a culture shock um, that I think you can even experience with other cultures, nowadays, and it can even be within the U.S. I remember when I first moved to Baltimore, the names of some of the businesses made me laugh, and so I integrated some of that into the second book. But where it'll be very literal, like, the great shoe store to buy running shoes, is like the name of the shop. And so it made me chuckle, but like locals are so used to, that's just like the way that things have been here, and in certain parts of the US, not just Baltimore, but where it's just kind of like, yeah, that's like that's how you name a shop. And um, so our perception can be different of what's ridiculous versus, what's serious.
and
Um,
I love that. And I did not really pick up on the whole Voyage of the Salamander, fish out of water type of scenario. Absolutely love that.
and
That is really
salamanders are
cool.
cool if you look at it. Like, they can kind of resurrect themselves. They can come
Yeah.
back to life and stuff. So
Okay, that's kind of getting to some you know slate, not
biology
spoilers.
homework.
Yeah, a little biology homework right there. Uh, maybe start to like maybe tell a little bit about what's going to happen to Lily and the rest of the crew of the Salamander. Whole thing about resurrection, and here's a girl who's had amnesia and is now slowly starting to find about who she is and her space in life
Mhm.
and all that good stuff. I am curious, Christian, but when you started writing this, and we're
Mhm.
going to get into the crux of our conversation here, what are do you have like any type of like influences? And it doesn't have to necessarily be like science fiction,
Mhm.
um, but like the crew, any of the crew members, or even Lily
Yeah,
herself, were these taken from any type of movies at all, or did you influenced by anything when you written
sure. I mean,
this?
a lot of things, and it all kind of melts together. But uh, I don't know if you are familiar with Ursula Le Guin and her writing. She's a classic sci-fi writer, and she invented the genre of feminist sci-fi. Uh, but uh, she has. I'm going to cheat here because I
Don't
did
shoot.
write some notes, but uh, and I can never remember the name properly, but The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas is a short story that she wrote that influenced me a lot, and also her novel, which is a little easier to remember, The Left Hand of Darkness. Um, so a lot of the themes in those works really inspired me.
Okay.
The ones who walk away from Omelas. So, in a nutshell, there is this uh, beautiful city that is a utopia, right? And you, anyone is welcome to live there and experience paradise, right?
Mhm.
But there is this hidden knowledge that people don't share. They don't speak of it openly. And the idea behind this is that if you were to learn this hidden knowledge, you would no longer want to live in paradise. And it's implied that they only can sustain paradise through the harm of others, the unseen.
Oh,
And and so the ones who walk away from Omelas are the ones who choose to leave paradise because it's unethical, essentially. So it's a little more
that's
complicated than that,
that's
but
intriguing, but also confusing in the way. So this is a utopia that they can only establish the utopia by causing violence to someone else. Is that what I'm
right,
hearing?
harm
Okay.
to someone. So it's kind of a think piece. It's not, there's not a lot. If you read the story, it's a little more clear, but essentially, what if there were uh, a utopia, a civilization that was powered off of the suffering of others? Would you still feel comfortable living there? And so
Uh,
obviously it's a commentary on the way that people live in the West, and
Yeah, that's
the
why we probably treat a lot of our poorer citizens and whatnot. Let's say, would be able to harm other people in order to live happier experience. Yeah,
right, yeah. And
that's
so
it. That's very intriguing, and I tend to like stories that there's sort of like a moral conflict
yeah.
going on with the characters there. So that's
So
okay.
there's all these deep things that I always try to express with my art, and some people who know me know that I'm very serious guy about certain things. But I'm also a fun guy, and I love to enjoy just movies and things like that. And so I've been inspired by a lot of different things, and I feel like these quiet moments in the book and the moments that are meaningful and that I want people to really absorb, they can only hit people. Um, and this is a lot of good sci-fi does a good job at this, and some does a really poor job at this, in my opinion. But where it'll only hit the average reader if they let their guard down, and they're only going to let their guard down if they're enjoying the story for another reason, like Star Wars. People would not have gone to Star Wars if they knew it was about the Vietnam War. but but because it was a fun space shootout movie, they let their guard down and then hopefully absorbed some of those messages that George Lucas had in there. Um, so for me, I wanted it's packed with adventure. It's mostly action adventure and fun and comedy, a little bit of romance, and then in the quiet moments, I hope that the quiet moments in the book have been earned so that I can get some of those messages across. But for the action and the fun, I was inspired by things like Mad Max Fury Road and just like kind of nonstop adventure, like where it just kind of hits you again and again and again. I think J.J. Abrams does a good job at that in some of his films, where it's just like you don't question the next bit because you're on the edge of your seat. You're waiting for the next. You're excited. You're being fed the popcorn constantly, and you don't really think about stopping. And so, in the moments where it pauses and it's quiet, then you can get some of those values, kind of absorbed in
Yeah.
there. So
As I tell you this too, when you read the story, it kind of just drops you right into the action right away.
yeah, we get
Uh,
there pretty fast.
you know,
Oh, the other one that's a big inspiration for me and the way I write science fiction is actually not sci-fi per se, but it's Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy because
oh,
um, he took things that are utterly absurd and made them feel very real. And I think that's a cool dance that I like to try to play with too. So like I have things in the book that are just really ridiculous and downright silly sometimes. But I hope that I've created a world that feels real enough that the reader will accept those things as just part of the world because there are
uh,
just silly things, in life, and that's part of it.
I love that. Yeah. And I guess you could maybe like see. Well, I'm not saying that Lillian exactly is like Batman, but she sort of like takes sort of like the core values, and you're probably doing the story itself could be a very like silly B level comic book pulp novel right
Yeah,
there, but then you're injecting all these different types of themes that you
right.
have mentioned to me before. This looks to be like a very kind of like almost like complex, but also that has a very fun element too. Something that could very well be played on like Saturday morning cartoons, but also have like
Right.
a big blockbuster element to it though, and absolutely love that. I love it very much when stories go into different genres, and they also have like different feels to it though. And I like characters that are not just one note, and
Mhm.
they are complex. And I'm very intrigued to
That's good. Yeah,
learn more about her as I, go through reading this right now. And I think
she is that. Yeah.
what is intriguing me even more about this book, and I know I've just met them, are the other crew members of the Salamander ship. And that is where most of the time when I'm reading books or stories, it's a lot of their side characters that I get
Hmm.
more involved with them more than I do with the main hero's journey. Uh,
Yeah.
at least for me, when I read stuff, I'm more interested in the side characters if there's other side characters involved. So yeah, so very
Well, so that is one thing that I worked very hard on. I hope it does come through that I wanted every character that was introduced to have an arc, even if it
mhm.
was a small arc. And some of the characters I think you get to know really well, like Karis and like Ulrich, um, Zen a little bit, but more in the next book. But when you Captain Callan, which is funny, I could go on about him if you want, but the one that uh, chapter 6, I think it's chapter 6 or 7, is, let me see, the mystery. So there's one chapter, like you were talking about, kind of switching genres.
Yeah,
That is one of the fun things of space opera, because if you look at like Star Trek, the original series, or the new one that's on now, Strange New Worlds, it's like every episode is a little genre play, and that's always really fun. But let me see, chapter 7.
yeah.
So chapter 6 they get on the starbase, and then chapter 7 there's a murder mystery, and in that chapter, that's a very long chapter, and the reason for that is because I had to introduce a lot of characters so that it wouldn't be obvious who the suspects were or who done it, right?
Sure.
And but I didn't want to just throw characters in there and not have them have some sort of arc. And so everyone who's like a legitimate suspect, there has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end to their story. And so I hope that does come through. I tried not to
Well,
cheat
did they do
there.
that? In Star Trek, they did do episodes where it's supposed to feel like a film noir, and
Absolutely, yeah.
I know there's been episodes of the X Files that was done in black and white that's supposed to like go back to that older
Hmm.
style. I mean, they've had like episodes
Buffy
of
the Vampire Slayer too. They did that.
is there going to be a musical little musical going on with these characters in a future book
I
or
don't know
something?
how that
Or
work in a book, but I love it. Maybe
you
Audible, maybe an audiobook, right?
you can still have them sing in the book. You know,
That's
you can write the story and have people imagine their own words and whatnot.
that.
Oh,
You're giving me ideas now.
I am curious. So you mentioned it right there, Christian. Audible. Are you ever going to do an audio version of this? Like have someone read this?
Yes, and so I will plug my Patreon if you want to find me on Patreon. I am trying to raise money right now to fund the audiobook because I don't want to. There is a audiobook available right now, but it is a computer reading the book, and I'm not really happy with that.
That's
And
fair.
I want like a professionally produced audiobook, that people could stream. And I have a voice actor who's just one of the best, Tiffany Van Landingham. Yeah, and she's just amazing. And
Oh,
so she's done like 100. You would recognize her voice. That's how popular she is on Audible. And but she, you know, is not cheap. Excuse me. She's a big fan of the book, and she even offered to do it for a lower price. And I was like, nope. I want to
oh.
compensate you at like the full, you know, your full rate. I'm just going to raise the money. So that's what I'm trying to do at this point is just I don't want to, I've put some of my own capital into this project. I don't want to go crazy and just keep spending tons and tons of money. So I
Well,
want now to maybe follow a progression. If there are enough fans to generate enough interest, and I've had people comment and tell me, "Oh, when is the audiobook coming out?" Because it would be a 14-hour listen, right? And people want that. They want to be able to just put it on in their car or at night or when they work or whatever, so that they don't, like you said, some people read a little more slowly, and some people don't have the time to read. But you can put the audiobook on. So I'm trying to generate enough interest that we can fund this project together, and we'll have just like the best killer audiobook
well, tell us
we can all enjoy.
what is your Patreon page? I'll make sure to post links and the show notes about
Yeah,
this.
so
So
it's my um, Patreon is now. See, I need to learn that one. My website is churstpublishing.com,
see hers publishing. Is links to your Patreon on
and
there?
my Instagram is Hurst Publishing, and my TikTok is Hurst Publishing, and the yeah, they'll all have links to my Patreon. If they don't right now, they will by the time this goes live.
Sure. Yeah, and I'll make sure to post links in the show notes. As I mentioned before, this will be going live until like June.
Right.
I do post all of our episodes on our Patreon page, and I'll put this up on our Patreon page this coming week or so.
Mhm.
But then in June, it'll go live everywhere. But I'll still post all the links on our Patreon page to your Instagram, the website you mentioned right there, and so that if listeners or watchers are curious to know more about this book, and if they are curious about the audiobook, because I will say this, I am a horrible reader, mainly because I take the bus everywhere, and the bumping, when you're riding
Yeah.
the bus,
Get car sick.
it makes it difficult to kind of like read stuff. But if I have an audio book in my ears,
Hmm.
I will just go through books a lot faster when someone's reading it to me. All right,
Absolutely.
that's just books. Like books, sometimes I need like a full day off. I need to go somewhere with my coffee and like read a book for like a while. That's where I am with book reading. Um, but
Yeah.
as I
It is
mentioned,
the Patreon link is patreon.com/Lily Starling Books.
okay, I'm gonna write
But
that. Patreon.com/ Lily Starlin book.
books plural.
Okay, okay.
But I'll send you all the links so you can post them.
Oh,
Um,
please do.
but yeah, I encourage everybody. The best thing you can do if you want to support the book is actually to on my website sign up either as a reader. Now, if you sign up as a reader and you join the Lily Starling team, what that means is I will send you early access to stuff and you can give me feedback on it. We could really make this second book a collaborative project. And if you do sign up for that, which is kind of like, you're joining the team and you're a contributor, then you get a free paperback copy of the first book. So that's a pretty good deal, I think. And
Yeah.
you get early access, and you get a shout out on Instagram with your picture, and you get to be basically a part of the crew. But if you aren't interested in that sort of participation, that's totally fine too. But the best way, if you do want to support the book still, either go sign up on Patreon and give what you can, or um, you could just sign up for our newsletter um, on my website, churstpublishing.com. If you sign up for the newsletter, then I have captured your email address, and I'm not going to spam you. It just means I can communicate when the other books come out so that you can buy those books as well. And then you can also check me out on Substack. Sometimes I post little teasers from the second book. There's actually a short story on Substack right now about Lily and Zen's relationship in between the books, and that
Ooh.
is just a beautiful read. It came to me in one night. I was like, I was really stuck on this chapter in the second book, which is called Storm Riders, Lily Starling and the Storm Riders. Talking about these pulp like sci-fi names,
Yeah.
right? But in between the book. So I was really working out this chapter and I was really stuck. And I couldn't figure out why, because I usually don't get writer's block, and I had tried everything. And I was falling asleep, and it hit me because I was like, it, this Zen's arc is not complete unless I talk about, because I had alluded to her and Lily in between books, and I was like, it's not complete unless I write that. I need to it doesn't exist unless I put it out there. So I just
I
spent the entire night writing what they did on the planet together in between the books. And it's a love story and it's beautiful, and I encourage everybody to check it out.
That is so cool. I love very much that you have like these other like side stories, almost like these spin-off little stories that are kind of that like fun little Easter eggs for the actual full story itself. Like these little like bonus novels you have, because this makes the world seem even like bigger. And almost this almost like invites other writers to maybe do other fan fictions about your characters. And
Hey,
how do you feel
I'm
about
I'm
other
open to
writers?
that.
Yeah, guys, how do you feel about other writers coming in and like, doing Lily Starlin as like a kid, or like Datches,
Yeah, sure.
someone
I think
else?
that
You
I'm open to that. That's way cool.
all right? Well, very cool. Well, Christian, this has been a big honor. It's always a big honor to have authors because you are way more creative in what you come up with your stories than I could be in any of a lifetime right there. So it's been very cool. The book is Lily Starlin and the Voyage of the Salamander. I will post links everywhere to where you can get this book, be part of the Lily Starlin team, the Salamander crew. Uh, Very good stuff there. Um, Before we do go, I should mention to our watchers and listeners that if you are a Patreon member for our website, patreon.com/cinemarecallpod, you'll be getting access to episodes early before they are ever released. If you cannot commit to a Patreon membership, I understand that. You can think about buying us a coffee. There will be links on our website about where you can buy us a coffee. And if you spend $5 or more, make sure you recommend a movie for us to watch, and we'll watch it and review it and give you a small little shout out right there. So before we do go, Christian, where else can our audience members find you?
Thanks, and it's been a real honor to be here and a pleasure. And I love talking about everything and talking about the book. You can find me at churstpublishing.com, or on Instagram at Hurst Publishing, or TikTok at Hurst Publishing, or pretty much just Google Christian Hurst author and I will come up. So
Very cool. We're going to end things right now with this episode, but stay tuned because there will be a bonus episode featuring Christian Hurst, who wrote the book Lily Starling and the Voyage of the Salamander. All right. Later, everyone.
thank you so much.
All right.